Hi, welcome on board again. I'm very happy to be here for this part two of this interview tonight. Here in France, we're Sunday evening, and in a minute, a true legend will join us. He is an amazing person. He has done a lot for the cinema industry. It's, of course, Mr. Dean Cundey. We are very proud to invite him tonight because he has done such a great work in Back to the Future trilogy, but also in a lot of other movies. He has a reason like that, a urge career. He's still in the business and he's very busy, so we're very happy he dedicated 1 hour to be here with us. So, welcome on board, Mr. Dean Cundey. Welcome on board. Here we are. Hey, Dean, how are you?
Very good. And how are you?
Very good. Hey, fine. A little tired because we have two guests today. We have had Jeffrey Weissman and Edward Hayes, the designer. So
Yes.
it was amazing having those vision of the work done in Back to the Future, and particularly in part two, designing the future. Wow, it was amazing. Such a great designer, such a great work they have done. So, Dean, thanks a lot because, as I said, you're someone very busy. You're still in the business with a lot of projects. You are still working a lot. So, thanks to be with us for 1 hour tonight. Thank you, Dean.
Well, it's my pleasure. I always enjoy talking about Back to the Future. It's one of my favorite films or trilogy films.
Okay, hoping we will have a lot of fun tonight with all the people watching us. It's
Well,
really,
yeah, I hope so.
really cool, Dean. So let me share my screen and put some slides for you to make this interview. And up top. Here we start. Yeah, with put it as a diorama in full screen like we are. So a little presentation. I haven't worked because I need a lot of time to present you. You've worked with Steven Spielberg, John Carpenter, of course, in Halloween. Wow, it's incredible. Ron Howard, just to name a few of the most popular. The list of your collaboration is so long with Hollywood directors that I can't put all of this in only one sheet. So we will start with the trailer, of course, we have made, and after that, we could speak some little words about your collaboration with John Carpenter, Robert Zemeckis, and of course Steven Spielberg, because you collaborate a lot with those directors. And after that, I will ask you some. Oh, what a great diorama here! Oh my God, it was in the
very nice. Look at that.
Did you remember that? It was very cool.
That's the only thing left of that town now, sadly.
Yes, the only thing, sadly, because of the fires.
Yes, it burned.
So let's have a look at some of the hits. Just some of the hits, because you have made many more. So, firstly, Halloween, of course, you were director of photography there. It was very interesting. This Halloween, for a lot of people enjoying screaming movies, Halloween is considered as a reference, like Crystal Lake and Jason for Friday 13. But Halloween is something special because there is an ambience, there is some visual techniques on this one which are very new for the period, and we could have a little word about later. So after that, a movie that I love a lot is The Fog. The Fog is one of my favorite movie, and of course a lot of others movies like Escaping New York, The Thing, Romancing the Stone, of course, a comedy, Back to the Future, of course, and Trouble in Little China. Wow, Roger Rabbit. Yeah, you work also on Roger Rabbit. Perhaps trying new methods on new things, because Roger Rabbit was a new. I never know the word, but it was a new movie with some new techniques, perhaps. So we could discuss about it after. Of course, the sequel of Back to the Future 2 and 3, Hook, Jurassic Park, Apollo, and many, many, many more. So speaking about the first question that we have, and a lot of fans told me that because they want to know how do you get involved in the cinema industry, because perhaps being a child or being a student, you were in admiration with some directors or some photographers. So did you study some person particularly or not? Or it was because it was a passion and you enjoy working in the cinema industry?
Well, I can't think of or say that there was any, like one cinematographer that I think what I did is I watched films, early films. I was interested in film since I was like 12 years old. So anytime I watched a film, I watched it for the technique, the visual storytelling. I mean, yes, the characters in the story were interesting, but I think I was fascinated by how the camera was used to create illusion, create the magic that we as an audience would see. And so I watched, I think, in general, the use of the camera as opposed to one particular cinematographer. I do remember when I was in film school, I liked the work of Conrad Hall. He was a cinematographer who did various really polished, elegant dramas. He did well. The one that I liked was The Professionals. It was a Western, but it had such a distinctive style that it drew my attention to how the camera was really a major part. I mean, the eyes of the audience, of course.
Sure.
And so I enjoyed so many films that I just I think I absorbed, the techniques of a lot of different cinematographers.
So you see the movies with another eyes, the eye of the technical guy, and trying to see how it was made or something like that with your passion, of course. And then you came into this.
It's interesting. People say, "Oh, how do I ever watch a movie and see the story or whatever, or am I just looking at the technique?" No, I usually explain. I see with two halves of my brain. I see the story, and I watch the characters, and I'm intrigued because I will say, "Oh, an excellent choice of dialogue or whatever." But I also watch with the other side of my brain, and I watch the technical. Where is the light coming from? How is the cinematographer creating the illusion? So I have to watch very, carefully both sides of my my perception.
Your perception. Wow. Right. I'm not able to do that. I have to watch the movie twice. Once with my first perception and the other one with the other to try to.
Well, and I think when I watch a movie again, and there's a lot of them, the good ones I'll watch several times. Each time, I get less involved with the story and more in the storytelling. How is the visual storytelling being done? So I enjoy watching good movies over and over. There's always something new to discover.
Oh, cool. Yeah, me too. I love watching movies. So thank you, Dean. And we'll watch the other question we have. Oh, this quiz, I love it because I know this word and I know you developed this technique about Steadicam. This is the Brown stabilizer, because at the beginning, I think Garrett Brown, the cameraman, named his invention the Brown stabilizer. And it was the Steadicam, but the first version of the Steadicam. And
Yes.
you are the pioneer. You are one of the pioneer of the use of Steadicam, particularly in Halloween, because there is some scenes in Halloween with the use of the Steadicam, which was quite new for the period. I think you are the first one to put this amazing invention, the Steadicam, on a Hollywood hit. So could you explain us this idea of trying to use some new method, and particularly in this movie, Halloween?
Well, the Steadicam came out maybe a year or so before Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a friend who worked at Cinema Products that made the Steadicam, and then also at Panavision, where they had the equivalent, the Panaglide.
The panel, yeah.
I tried them out, and they were an amazing device for allowing you to move a camera smoothly through a scene and past people and so forth. Not like handheld. Handheld, the camera operator would put the camera on his shoulder, but as he walked, the movement was transferred to the camera.
Mm-hmm, sure. Mm-hmm.
And there was something always sort of artificial about it. It drew attention to the fact that we were watching someone with a camera. The frame would move.
The frame.
So the Steadicam allowed you to move the camera very slowly and smoothly and without any movement, if you learned how to use it properly. So my friend and camera operator, Ray Stella, and I went to Panavision, and we tried it out, and we taught ourselves how to use it. And it was such an effective way to move the audience through the story smoothly that it turned out to be a great asset for Halloween. John Carpenter said, let's use the Steadicam as a way to involve the audience in the story without them being aware of the jiggling movement.
Mm-hmm.
So the very first shot in Halloween used the Panaglide to move the audience up to the house, to look at the window, around the side, to look through the window, to see the action of the kids, down next to the house, in through the kitchen, up the stairs. So it was a long, continuous shot.
Sure, an amazing opening scene for the movie. Yeah.
Yes, it really it made the audience feel they were the ones who were walking through this house and into this scene. And when it was so successful, we just continued using it throughout Halloween to follow Michael Myers, to be the point of view of Michael Myers, to follow the characters. It gave us a great deal of mobility, the opportunity to move around and take the audience through a scene in a way they hadn't seen before.
Yeah, and it works very well because a lot of people like the way that you've seen the scene being Mike Myers, etc. So yeah, it works very well as a movie, and it was a great success.
Yeah.
Congratulations! Amazing success with an amazing new scene. And apparently, the opening scene wasn't storyboarded, so you have to invent and create it. This one, sure or not? Was it storyboarded or not? This amazing opening sequence.
No, I think we sort of invented it as John developed the story, and it was a new use of the camera, and we said let's try it, and it worked so well that it became just the technique for the whole film.
Okay. Incredible. So thank you for this explanation, Dean. And let's see the next. Next page. Oh, yeah, we spoke a little about that, but Without SFX, it makes things more realistic, of course. But with SFX or VFX, you could do the impossible. As you said, we could make the illusion. So you work both ways. You work with and without, trying to put the ambience and to involve people being with this ambience. But do you prefer working with or working without? Because it's not the same way and it's not the same work to do when you
Well,
work without.
I was always, as a kid, attracted to movies that were about illusion, creating something that wasn't possible in real life that would take the audience on this journey through a fantastic experience, an unusual world, or whatever. So that was what attracted me to films. So the visual effects are the things that make it possible to create this illusion. It was the chance to tell a story in a fantastic story in a way that maybe got the audience to believe it. And so I've always enjoyed films with visual effects. If you look at a lot of my resume, films are ones that had to use visual effects in order to create the illusion, and it's always been a great kind of fun thing for me.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, you have in your resume a lot of movies with some visual effects, and yeah, it's incredible to work that way. I remember Kevin Pike, when I visited him last year, I think, he told me a visual effect is well done when you are not able to notice it, when it seems to be real, but in fact, it was not real. It was a visual effect, because he told me that in Back to the Future, every scene, apart, I think, the dance, but every scene has a visual effects. So for something, we say, there's no the use visual effects in that. But say, yes, there are visual effects inside, but you don't notice it because it's well done and it's the illusion of the reality, but it's not the reality. It's some visual effect inside. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think it's amazing that there are so many films now that require fantastic visual effects. A lot of superhero movies,
Exactly.
stuff. The effects get you to believe that world exists. But one of the things I like about visual effects is when they're used very subtly.
Sure.
When you believe something, but it turns out that it isn't possible. We had to use visual effects. It's the kind of thing that I think it is the most interesting to an audience. The fact that they're watching a movie, a scene, characters who are experiencing something new and unusual. And so they, as the audience, are also experiencing something new and unusual. And to get them to experience this in a way that is very believable is the fun part, as opposed to the audience knowing that they're being fooled because we don't have superheroes or people who can fly.
Yeah, sure. Some things were very real, but in fact, it was with the help of the visual effects. Yeah, totally agree.
Right.
I totally agree. So one of the questions that they ask me a lot about you, it is, how do you get involved in Back to the Future? Because yes, you have done a lot of things, and Back to the Future is also a movie with the use of visual effects, of course. But what is the little details of the person, or how did you get involved in this franchise?
Well, I had done a film with Bob Zemeckis, Romancing the Stone.
Yeah.
And we seemed to enjoy and had a good time with it. And so then when Bob called me later. He said they were going to do this film that he and Bob Gale had written some long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And was I interested? And I read it, and it was so interesting, so imaginative. It told a story that I think we've all sort of wished for, the ability to go back in time and fix something, a mistake we made, or to experience something that we wish we could have, So the premise was so interesting, and I so enjoyed working with Bob. He's a very inventive director. He was very aware of how to use the camera for telling the story, and that's the thing I enjoy the most, is using the camera. So he invited me along on this journey of traveling back to the future.
Exactly, yeah. And you work very closely with him, and not only the visual effects used in the movie, but as you said, also the story, because the storyline of Back to the Future is incredible. And if we see the storyline of all 3 episodes, it's incredible how it's very well made. So yes, I'm sure when Bob told you that he was trying to do this movie, you enjoy first reading the script and the storyline, because the storyline is awesome. And after, perhaps, you enjoy having the possibility of putting some visual effect on it.
And what's interesting is the script to Back to the Future is pointed to very often as one of the best constructed movie scripts in the modern filmmaking. That there's nothing in the story that doesn't apply to something else. There's no extra plot lines or characters or whatever, and everything that happens is all about the story. And if you go and look at the movie and say, oh, I see that point there, I didn't notice it, it pertains to this or that. So when I read the script, I said, wow, this is really well written, and it would be a great pleasure to be part of telling a story like that.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, sure. And it was a success, because a lot of people, kids, and even now, 35 years after, we enjoy watching it on theater or on TV. It was a great success. And because there's no part 4, it's the trilogy of all time. We cannot speak about Star Wars now. We have to speak about Back to the Future. It's incredible. Thank you for those details. And speaking about the ambience, Dean, there is an ambience that each fan loved a lot in the Back to the Future 2. It's when Marty came back in the present, but it's in the before-ific period. And in this period, a lot of long shoot, dark shoot, with an ambience like Blade Runner or something like that, because you put the same present, but much darker. So how do you make that? Using different sort of lenses of photography, or technically, how did you make that?
Well, I think that's the fun that about filmmaking in general, but about the Back to the Future trilogy, is that we have to use our creativity. We have to use our imaginations as filmmakers to develop techniques and to develop things that the audience can look at and say, oh yeah, I understand exactly where I am or when I am, the story that's happening, to the characters I like and to the villain I hate. And so it was especially fun because the Back to the Future trilogy jumped from one time period to another and back and so forth, and we get to go from the contemporary times to the past, 1955, into the future, then back to the deep past, the Western period. So it was a lot of fun to say, how can I tell the audience where and when they are, and to use different colors of light, warm colors for the past, cool colors for the future when Marty goes into Biff's awful world, and so it was. I think that's the thing that's the most fun about doing a film like that is how do you tell the audience where they are? How do you tell them how they should be feeling just because of what they're watching?
Yeah, putting the right links in the right places and to make the connections exist.
Exactly.
It makes sense. A question of our public, which has no way to Back to the Future, is Gra Emmanuel, who asks, Dean, did you like The Mandalorian? Be careful, you have a baby Yoda just watching you behind. So, did you enjoy the movie The Mandalorian? He's watching you, the baby Yoda. Be careful.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's a series that is based on Star Wars, but it's one that isn't just about the flashy future. Yes, they fly in spaceships and everything, but there's so much of it that is about telling the story visually, the world that they live in, and so forth. But the story is a very straightforward one. It's a Western. George Lucas is famous for having made Star Wars based on the premise that we like in Western movies: the hero, the bad guy. All of the character relationships are not highly dramatic future characters. They are ones that, if you think about it, it's a film that could be written as almost any other film. There are characters and stuff that we all like and identify with, and so The Mandalorian is one of those that spins off and is in fact very much a Western.
The stylish Western style, yeah.
Yeah.
And what about Ready Player One?
So which one? Oh, Ready Player One. I have to admit I didn't see it.
You didn't see it. All right.
I'm going to have to see it because it is, obviously.
Lot of new technologies also and visual effects, very good. The use of the DeLorean, very cool also, and the mix of all of those movies was very cool. You have to see it, yeah, of course. So speaking about period time, for example, if you could travel through time with the DeLorean time machine, when and where?
Oh, that's a tough one. There's so many great moments in history that I think I would want to go see. I'd hate for it to be a time machine that I only get to go one place. I would like it to. I'd like it to be like Doc Brown's time machine, that I could just punch in and visit a lot of places. Go back in history to see great moments.
If you have sufficient plutoniums, no problem. But you have to have a lot of plutonium.
Yes.
Yes. And your best souvenir on the set, I know that you have a lot of great souvenirs on the set of Back to the Future. And firstly, which episode? 1, 2, or 3? Because you work each episode, they are very different.
Yeah,
And
that
I think
stuff also.
number three for fans is not the preferred episode, but watching it and watching it and watching it again, I think a lot of fans now prefer perhaps number three instead of number one, because more you watch it and more you see that it's a movie very interesting because it's a mix of the comedy of some futuristic things, and in fact number three with the western period could be a great mix of the other ones. What your thoughts?
I like number one because it's such an interesting new premise, you might say. Traveling, a young fellow who travels back in time. Sometimes we see time machines where somebody goes into the future and it becomes fantastic.
Oh.
Maybe they travel back to the medieval period, and it's hard for us to identify. I think Back to the Future was so interesting because the character travels just a short amount of time to a time period that many of us went through. I went through the 50s, 1955. But it's also a time period that if you are interested, if you're younger, you can look up information and find out about that time period. So it seems
Very exciting.
it's accessible. I very much enjoy Back to the Future 3, though. I've always enjoyed creating a time period. I've enjoyed Western films. And what was interesting about Back to the Future 3 from a storytelling standpoint is that the audience goes back to the Old West. And it's kind of like the Old West that we have seen in films. If you watch a Western film,
Yep, exactly.
John Wayne and all of those, great actors from the period of the 50s and 60s when Westerns were very, very popular. And so I enjoyed creating that time period, but with that sort of subtle understanding that we are seeing it as a modern audience. That is, Marty and Doc are from our time period, presumably, and they are experiencing this new world. And there's always sort of a little turn to the audience and wink, wink. What do you think about this? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Wow. And talking about part three, I will show you this scene, the most popular one for me in part three. On this one, you decided to dress on the period you were shooting, and nobody knows why. So could you explain this? Because it was a great cameo. Was it previous or not? Was it a surprise for the staff in the morning when they all see you dressed like that? So I cannot imagine.
No, I always dress like that. That's I'm only kidding. I
in the past
they decided to add a little moment where a photographer takes a picture that ties Marty and Doc to the clock tower, which of course is always a very important aspect of the movie. And when they looked around to find, an extra or an actor or somebody said, "Hey, what about him?" And they pointed at me. And they said, "Would you like to play the old photographer?" And I said, "How appropriate. I am an old photographer." At the time, I wasn't that old. And so I said, "Sure." And they found a costume that fit me. And I got to say a line in the movie. And I've become, and when people say Back to the Future 3, what is that film about? I tell them that it's about an old photographer in the West who takes an important and the rest of it, nothing else. There's nothing else.
Only this sequence. You take a good photograph, very important photography, and that's
Oh,
all.
very,
The
very
was
important.
written.
Right.
Thank you. So at the beginning, no people was doing this character, so they decided, oh, what about him? And the him was you.
Yeah.
So fun.
So it was
So
an
fun.
interesting moment.
Yeah, sure. It was very cool. And talking with Mr. Lloyd, because we've seen Chris Lloyd in this photo,
Mhm.
I see he also preferred, I will put it on this one. I think, oops, he preferred also part three because, as you said, a lot of westerns, a lot of things, and perhaps also a challenge of riding horses or things like that. No? What about it? About those challenges? Because for actors, I think uh, part three was very challenging. But for you behind the camera, with those ambience, different ambience to put those links between the storyline. So a lot of great challenges also. So what's your opinion about that? Challenges for actors, but also challenges for photographers?
Yeah. Yeah. I think making a film is always about collaborating, a crew and actors and all of these people who have to bring something to a film.
Mhm.
Everybody is important because the audience, when they're watching, is seeing the work of everybody, all of the people behind the camera, the crew, all of the people in front of it, the main actors, but then um, the secondary actors, even the background people who just walk on the street.
Sure.
Uh,
Everybody is important, yeah.
yeah, because they are creating the mood and the style. So I think it's important that we acknowledge the fact that it's such a collaborative art that so many people are involved that you can't remove anybody and say, oh, they're not necessary.
No, of course. Of course, everybody is important when you do a movie. Like you said, a
Right.
collaboration between everybody. And for example, uh, people saying, oh, you have to do the old photographer. So it was not previous. And at the end, it was a great success because, as you said, it's a little role in the little character, but with an importance in the scenario very big because he took this famous photo. So each little character, each crew, each people working on the staff behind or in front of the camera is very important, of course,
Exactly.
of course. So did you ride any horse during the set or not?
We had quite a number of horses, to make the town look busy with horses.
Uh-huh,
During lunch one time, I asked one of the horse wranglers, could I
wow,
ride a horse?
uh-huh.
I had ridden horses since I was young, just sort of casually, so I knew how to do it.
Oh, yeah.
So but they didn't know that. So they put me on this very old, slow horse, so I wouldn't get thrown off or have any runaway problem in this. But it was fun to ride a horse through an old Western town.
Yeah, sure. For that reason, I ask you this question because I imagine being in the Old West, the first thing you want to do is taking a horse and ride and make a little visit of the city in the
Of
horse, like a cowboy,
of course, yeah,
of course. And each people working on the set told me during the past interviews, and I know a lot of guys, so they all told me that it was working in Back to the Future was very hard because you spent a lot of time working and working and working, 20 hours per day working. But at the same time, you have had a lot of fun because it was like working with a little family. And even if you work a lot during the day, 20 hours per day, you enjoyed a lot working with all those amazing people because it was a lot of fun working on Back to the Future. Is it the same for you, Dean?
Oh yeah, you know, what's interesting is that we had a very excellent crew. We all got along very well. We went on location up into the middle of California to the old gold country,
Yep.
and they built the town up there. So there was an authentic feeling. It wasn't like it was a Western town on the back lot in Burbank, California, or Los Angeles somewhere. It was like going to the place where this old world happened, where they discovered gold and they built these towns just like Hill Valley. So it was a lot of fun to be there, to see that, to experience it with a lot of people that you know, we all enjoyed being with. We would on weekends we were there. We would go out to dinner together and in the old Western town, and it was a lot of fun. I look back at it as being one of my best experiences in the film business.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Because you have a lot of works in a lot of movies, but if you say that, it's very cool. And is there any scene in each movies, for example, particularly in Back to the Future, which was very difficult to shoot, and you have to shoot and shoot and shoot it again because you didn't, you was not happy with that, and some troubles appear. It was difficult to shoot it because technology or techniques or people, I don't know. For example, I remember Kevin Pike telling me that for the opening of the sequence in the dog's garage with all those clocks, he said it's a one shot, traveling slowly, seeing a lot of those clocks in the garage, and perhaps you have to shoot it twice or third or four times. But is there in this movie, or part two or three, a specific scene which was very hard to shoot because of techniques or people?
Well, the one you mentioned, the opening sequence, was very, very tricky. It We had to move the camera just carefully,
Mm-hmm.
but we had to see each photograph on the wall just the right amount of time, and then move to the next one. And we had to be there just when the dog food can turned over, and when the toast popped up in the toaster. So it was all about timing because it was not a series of shots. Originally, it was planned to be a shot about the toaster, and then
Oh,
a shot about the dog food.
and another one, another one. Okay.
Yeah, and they were going to just cut them together. And I said, well, why don't we use this new thing, the remote head with the crane arm,
Oh.
and it would allow us to do it all in one flowing movement. So the audience could feel like they were there, just walking along or watching all of these things and exploring Doc's house, or his garage.
Yeah.
It was that was one of the fun things about the first film.
Oh.
The the second film, there were so many interesting moments in it. It would be hard for me to think of one in particular. And
Perhaps it's one where we could see a lot of Martys at the same time on the one scene because you use technology also to put these different Martys at the same time on this scene, no? Was it difficult or not using this technology of putting Michael J. Fox twice or three times?
yeah, I think one of the trickiest scenes was the scene of the family at the dinner table.
Yep, this one.
Marty has come home from work, and we had, let me see, Marty three times, and you know, so we had to have this motion control computerized camera that we had to design the kind of shot that, again, nobody had really done. It was that's one of the fun things about a Bob Zemeckis film is that you're always being challenged to do something
Something new, something fresh.
new that somebody else had not done or not done successfully. And so that I think that dinner table scene in number 2 was very complex.
Yeah.
And it took us, well, I think it was all a day for one shot.
Wow, incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, because Michael had to change costumes to become his older self, his son, his daughter. He had to learn to hand himself a glass of
yeah,
water.
so we have to wait after him. It's complex. You have to do this technology of splitting the screen once, 2, 3 times, and to mix all of those difficulties to make the final scene a success. And it was, really it was, because in part 2, when you see this fantastic scene with all the family and seeing Michael 1, 2, 3 times in the same scene, you didn't notice that there are some split screen, etc. The illusion.
No,
the illusion.
They did an amazing job putting that film together. That shot.
Yeah. And what about thinking of Back to the Future as only one movie? As you said, the storyline is very well made, and each thing is okay with the other one. So I agree that the link between part 2 and part 3 is probably easier to understand because you shoot part 3 just after having shooting part 2, and it was made as a long movie, and then it was cut in 2 parts. So the scenario and the storyline is only one because it was like a long movie. But trying to find the good links with part 1, because in each movie you go to a period of time which is linked with part 1. So it was challenging on the storyline, but in your work, you have to create the exact same scene, the exact same ambience. So to put those links exactly the same as part 1. So how challenging what is to make those links?
Well, what's interesting is they wrote Back to the Future 1, and that was going to be the movie. It was just going to be a movie about a kid who goes back in time.
A one-shot.
Yeah. And when it was such a huge success, they decided they had to make a second one, a sequel. Well, the second one was so long when they read the script. They said, oh, well, the movie will be 3 hours. It'll be too long.
You have to split it.
So they eventually came up with the idea to split it and find a way to end number 2 at a place where number 3 could pick up and move on. And so it was a lot of fun because they also committed to making the film one right after the other, which was good because there wouldn't be a big time delay of a year between shooting number 2 and 3. It would all be one continuous look, one continuous storyline, and no difficulty trying to get the stars because they're all off on some other movie, right?
Sure.
So it was a very wise idea on the part of Universal and Spielberg and Zemeckis and all of those people.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the storyline was very well made, incredible. So at the moment now you're working, because you're still in the business, with a lot of directors, a lot of different projects, but also as a teacher giving some lessons, etc. What kind of advice could you pass on people interested about filmmaking? Because with your experience, you have an advice to give from people which have a lot of interest, because a lot of people think that you are a reference in filmmaking. So is there any advice you could pass on them?
Well, I think when I teach at a film school or to
Mhm.
new filmmakers, one of the things I ex, express, and I stress it, is that in order to succeed in this business, you have to have passion. You can't listen to people who say no.
Mm.
No, you're not going to succeed. No, you can't do that. No, always um, forge ahead, try harder, um,
Mm.
and then and take any job you can get, no matter how small it is or how small a movie.
Mm.
You gain experience, you gain um, you gain contacts with various people who might hire you later or can recommend you to someone. So
Mhm.
passion and doing
And
whatever
work
you
hard.
can is very important.
Yeah, totally agree. And in the same way, your passion and working with the Makis and the Romancing the Stone, as you said, after that you work together in Back to the Future,
Right?
making relationship, etc., etc. So
Exactly.
thanks for those kind of advice, Dean. And I will choose some questions from the audience. Oh, we have one from my friend Shov. Dean, what is your favorite John Carpenter film you have worked on?
Mm. Well, that's hard
Yeah,
because
you work on a lot of movies from
Each
John
John
Carpenter.
Carpenter film was um, a new experience in storytelling. Um,
Mhm.
I look at besides Halloween being the introduction
Mhm.
and creating a new uh, type of film,
Yeah.
the suspense thriller horror film.
Mm-mm-mm.
I think I've enjoyed Escape from New York
Oh,
because it was creating uh, a world that
uh-huh.
didn't exist anywhere,
Yes. Uh-huh. Sure.
um, and with very unusual characters.
Mm.
So I enjoyed um, working on Escape from New York, although
Mhm.
Big Trouble in Little China was sort of a big epic
Ah,
um,
yeah. An
adventure.
epic movie. Fun.
Yeah, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, I would say uh, Escape from New York.
Escape from New York. Okay. Yeah, it's a great movie. I love also this one and a lot of movies from Carpenter,
Hmm.
particularly well made. And now I think it's time to talk a little about Team Fox because I know you're involved in Team Fox also. Uh, we met yet together in the past in 1885 in Terry's and Oliver's event in the West. And of course, the main goal also of this event is to raise funds for Paul Michael J. and for Team Fox, of course. So regarding Team Fox, just a little reminder that some auction for the people who is watching us, some auction are launched each day in my Facebook profile, and you could bid online, and all the profits benefits Team Fox.
Hmm.
So, uh,
Very, it's a very commendable charitable
mm,
operation that
mm, mm,
Michael has um, committed himself to it, and I I support him completely for all of the work that he's done.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And a lot of fans have supported the cause and supported Team Fox because when you talk about Back to the Future, you cannot talk back to the Future without talking about Michael and Parkinson disease, of course.
Right,
So the best reason to make scene when you when you're with your children watching the movie and say, "Oh, I love Michael, I love Marty," etc. You have to explain how it's important is to be involved in the cause because it's not only have fun watching the movie because yes watching the movie at the time is very fun but it's also thinking of how could I help to cure this terrible disease, because 1 year long we have talked about COVID because we are on the COVID period, and of course there's a lot of other diseases that need to be cured, and Parkinson has no cure at the moment. So we have to raise
No,
funds and to help because there's no cure for Parkinson.
no, we get sidetracked with this brand new
Mm,
disease.
mm, mm,
But
mm.
we have to remember there are so many others that
Exactly.
have affected us as humans, as people. So I think it's a wonderful thing that what you're doing, but also what Team Fox does to help
To help Michael, yeah.
with issues that have been around for a long time.
Mm. And also, I want to thank you, of course, Dean, because as I said at the beginning, you're very busy, and coming here freely to speak about your movies and to give us 1 hour of your time to raise fund and to help us to raise fund for Team Fox. It's incredible. Thanks a lot. Any little word you would add for a final, or is there something you want to say us, or an advice or a movie, whatever?
No, I think that movies have touched us all. I think we all understand the importance of movies for entertaining us, of course, but also teaching us about people and personalities and the reflections of events in our own lives.
Mm,
That we have to remember that they should always be there, and I think they will.
mm,
Even though now we're watching movies in our living rooms on a big,
sure.
huge, giant TV,
Mhm.
or sometimes just on your
Just
iPad,
no, exactly
or sometimes just on your phone.
on your phone. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but always be interested in watching and understanding the stories
Understand the story.
of
It's
film.
exactly, and this is how the passion begins. Watching, and then you
Right.
like, and you begin to be
Yeah.
passionate. Exactly. Yeah.
No, after the film is over,
Mhm.
perhaps you'll be getting up, um, out of the seat in the theater or from your couch in your house,
Mhm.
and you'll say, "Well, let's have a pizza." But over that pizza, I bet you start talking about the film and
Exactly.
I can't believe, why did the girl do that? Or he was such an evil man. Couldn't they see that? Or, and we begin to relate it to our lives. So I think always do that. Always,
Yeah.
I always say that, for many years we've had literature. We've had Shakespeare and Mark Twain and Charles Dickens and famous authors who've written words in books.
Mhm.
But film has become the literature of today.
Mm.
It's how we see most of our stories
Sure.
and understand our characters and stuff. So think about film in terms of literature. What did you learn from it? Did did you see a character that relates to your own life somehow?
Mm.
Um, you thought you hated, but now you understand better. Those kinds of things are important about film.
Yeah, exactly. To try to understand and to have this vision, you tell us the double vision, and to be
Yeah,
able to see it on different ways. Yeah, very
exactly.
interesting. And perhaps the last question, because someone asked this question, I found interesting, and we will end with this one. Is there any movie you didn't work on but you would like have?
Mm. Oh, it would be hard for me to pick one,
Yeah, you have worked on all of the hits, so there's no more movie on which you didn't
but
work.
also there are films that I would love to have been part of, and even just old films that were in
Ah,
the 30s and 40s. I
uh-huh.
I wish I could work on an old film from the 1940s So I wish I had a time machine.
Sure. A time, but it was invented in Back to the Future. So
Yeah,
now let's go to the garage to take the time machine to find some Mr. Fusion or plutonium. And
yeah. Well, maybe I can get Michael Lantieri to build one for me.
Last Mike. Okay, so thank you, Dean. Thanks for your time. Thanks for all you have done for the fan. Thanks for your great work. Good luck for all of your projects, because you have a lot of projects running. And it was really a pleasure to talk to you.
Great pleasure talking to you and to the audience out there. And don't forget Team Fox.
Exactly, it's very important. Don't forget Team Fox. We will end with this little word. And where we're going, we don't need road, but we need donation for Paul Michael J. So thank you very much, Dean. Thanks for all, guys. And see you in the future.
Yep.
Thank you, Dean. Bye-bye. Wow, it was very interesting. Dean is very gentle and he has a big career. He worked on so many hits, giving explanation of all the work he has done in Back to the Future. Wow, very, very interesting. I hope you enjoy it. A lot of thanks for you, Dean. A lot of thanks. Exactly, yeah, a lot of people watching us now. And as he said, it's very important to think about Team Fox. So guys, give donation on the Facebook, just here in this little address. And congratulations for the winners of the auction today. And I hope, like me, you enjoyed a lot to talk to Dean today, to have his vision of the Back to the Future series, because it was very important to have the vision of this cinematographer, which is for me one of the best cinematographers in the world. He has done so many new things for the film industry and so many works for Back to the Future. It's someone very exceptional. So thank you, Dean. Thank you all of you guys for watching us. And don't forget, we have a raffle with your friend. Just go on the Facebook, a raffle to win some poster from the Back to the Future musical. And we will give the name of the winners with Bob Gale on Wednesday. Wednesday is Back to the Future Day. Bob Gale will join us on Back to the Future Day to speak about Back to the Future. And we will find time to give the name of those winners of the raffle for Back to the Future musical posters. So be generous. Don't forget Team Fox. And thanks again for watching us. And thanks to you, Dean Cundey. See you in the future, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.